Hello everybody, it's David here from Squared Space, and we're acknowledging the long road ahead. So we all set out on this long journey to build our dream homes. Hopefully we engage the skills and talents of an architect. We most certainly will engage the skills and talents of an engineer. You will most certainly send basic PDF drawings to every builder in the yellow pages once upon a time, or on the first page of Google as we have it now. And we do that with the expectation, of course, that builders will give us a price to build our house based on a set of PDF drawings, elevation sections, um, and then as a retail, we call it retail client, homeowner, you will then possibly endeavor to determine which one is the better value. And ultimately, when I use the word better value, the subtext is you can go with the cheapest option. Maybe not the cheapest if it's out by a factor of 50 or 60,000 euros. But if it comes down to the 10 or 20,000 euros, the heart will go where the heart will go. And that's a personal choice. I'm not objecting to that particularly. I'm just suggesting to you that it might be prudent to consider getting a quantity surveyor involved at a very minimum. You're about to spend 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 100,000 euros building your home, and to skip that last process, that last element where you say to yourself, I know where I'm going in terms of my destination. We have a roadmap, we have a plan, we know how we're going to get there, but nobody figured out how much it's going to cost to get there. We have an idea, we have an idea vaguely of how much it's going to cost. And oftentimes, I know from my own experience, you have a desired price in your mind based on arbitrary figures, availability of credit, um, or pressures you put on yourself to try and achieve a budget. Because when you initially envisaged building the house to the point where you're now ready to go and get a planning application in, or maybe you've gotten planning already, which is nearly worse, and now realize you can't afford the building you got, that could have been avoided very quickly by engaging the services of a quantity surveyor. I'm not a quantity surveyor, luckily enough, and most of the best construction companies that I've been dealing with, certainly in my short time in the game, wouldn't take a dump unless their QS had had a look at the project correctly and put a price on it. They would not take a dump. Excuse the bluntness of it, but sometimes you just have to be blunt for impact. And the problem that I'm encountering more and more is I'm not necessarily bidding to build your home. I'm part of the supply chain, and I'm offering a viable alternative timber frame, certainly a better method than traditional. But I'm talking to these homeowners and I'm passionate about their project because I really get involved and really get engaged with architecturally designed homes, 150 square meters and above, and maybe extensions 40 square meters and above with some architectural merit. It has to add up, lads. There's no point. Anybody can build you a square on the back of a building. It's designed as a square because it's cheaper to build, mock Georgian, modern vernacular, cottage style, pitched roof, cement tiles. It's anybody's game. Anybody can build a house like that. My particular passion, my place to add value is something with some structural engineering, some good design, something that needs that bit of, engineering. And steel just runs away with that. I mean, if you're looking at cantilevers, if you're looking at good ceiling heights, big spans, you really need to be looking at steel, and you need to be talking to me. But the problem is, of course, I would recommend a builder possibly, or I would submit my price to a builder on behalf of a client who's looking to get a price together and would consider using like edge steel. And then Other builders will price the job, and generally the kind of companies that I like to refer business to are process driven. They know how to price a job properly. There might be one or two PC sums in there, uh, just for safety's sake, and again, depending on the detail. But ideally, it's upfront. The price of steel and the steel frame. We give the Irish Times quote, not the Sun. I always say this to people. We give the Irish Times of quotes, not the Sun. Now, a budget estimate, fine. I can tell you now, it's going to cost you between 12 and 1,500 euros for builder's finish. It's going to cost you 15 to 1,700 euros outside of Dublin for a reasonable finish, and maybe 2 to 2,500 euro for a top end finish, uh, roughly speaking. And whether you do that in timber, blockwork or not, or steel, ultimately it's all going to add up to that kind of money. And the sooner people accept that and design with that in mind and prepare themselves financially for that, those clients are out there, and we'd love to talk to you because you're a realist and we live in the real world. But what I mean is, we submit a bid like that or a quotation like that, and then Jimmy the builder down the road in his van will send in an email with, some idea of how much it's going to cost, and it could be a PC sum for this, a PC sum for that, or 40 grand for the windows, or maybe 80 grand for this and 20 for that. And oh yeah, if you want this, sure, the electrics will be 30ish, and the client, they just skip to the bottom of the page and they're, oh yeah, look at, geez, that's Jimmy there now. I know him, and he built Mary's house, and nobody mentioned the fact, and certainly Mary didn't mention the fact that she started at 250 and ended up at 290. But sure, he was in, and what could you do? You had to finish the house, and that is the national obsession. Go in with the low price, PC sum the life out of it. Be vague. It suits the client because they don't want to face up to the reality. It suits the builder because they can always say, well, geez, there was no detail in that drawing, sure, how could I price for that? And it's a contrivance here of almost, I wouldn't ever say blind ignorance, but a willingness to engage after going to all the detail of drawing out this house, mapping it out, planning out the journey, putting the building together that it might work, to skip the financial element of it, the bit that's going to impact you outside of material, the material makeup of the building, the bit that's going to impact you for the next 25 to 30 years as you pay for it, is just, it's bizarre. I mean, I can understand in COVID times how people might struggle to commit to construction contracts, especially with the drip feeding and the BS that's been carried out by the media and by government in general. And I know it's difficult to call these things, but I mean, you either say we're closed and we'll support you, or we're open. But the same builder who's putting in the maybe 250, 260 price PC sum all down the line versus the guy who's being methodical, breaking everything out, getting quotes for your windows, getting quotes for your kitchen, getting quotes for the sanitary where you actually want to use, not just, sure, there's the toilet, what's wrong with the toilet? I only priced for this toilet kind of character. I've lost it again, haven't I? Yeah. So yeah, sorry. That's an indicator already that you're going to end up in trouble. And you just need to put a tender pack together. Use your architect, use your engineer, get a quantity surveyor, whatever you do. If you're going to send emails out and ask people to price a building for you, and all you're sending them is a PDF set of drawings, 4 or 5 pages, elevations and sections, you're on a hiding to nowhere. You're anybody's. And some people will look at that and say, there's an opportunity to get that job. It'll be kind of 300. I'll tell them 250. We get the job off the ground. I'll tell them 220, and we'll get the job off the ground. And then you have the guy who's trying to be straightforward, clear, concise, certain, and I'd say 290. And they're like, no. But we were told like 220, 250 was our kind of budget. And well, the figures don't lie, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to buy 50 grand's worth of windows, they're going to cost you 50 grand. And if you want a building contractor to put them in, you're going to pay for that. And it just seems like people are not prepared for that. And maybe, look, And here's a statement. It could be the type of client that's attracted to steel or to modern methods of construction, are looking for certainty, but are not prepared for the reality. And it could be the demographic of the people I'm talking to. No offense to all the people who have engaged with me for quotations and discussions and contracts and all the rest. In my mind, they're coming in, sending out 4 pages, 5 pages drawings with no detail. So my interpretation, or the QS's interpretation, or the engineer's interpretation of that drawing is subjective. And then we're sending back quotations as part of our policy here with the details of the quantities for the internal framing, the details and quantities of the frame, the structural steel, the board, the insulation, everything quantified and priced. And we're getting contra quotes and cover quotes and 1-page emails with walls 60, roof 20, windows 40. And they're 250, they're 260, and we're 290, 300. And I know by looking at it, and I'm not a QS, nor would I claim to be. I mean, it's a science, it's a skill, it's an art form. And I'm looking at that going, that client hasn't got a chance. No, they will tease out the price, but they're making decisions, they're discounting credible contractors who are putting time and effort and money into pricing these jobs, only to realize after the fact that, oh yeah, that it did end up costing 290, and it was painful and hard to find the extra money after the horse had bolted. And it's too late to say I told you so, nor would I attempt to say I told you so. But I'm telling you now. So, some blue sky thinking there, ladies and gentlemen, from Dave in Squared Space. A little bit of a rant on my squeaky chair. I put on my virtual background today just to hide all my post-its. People are getting very interested in what's going on in my post-its, but a little bit of blue sky, long road ahead. Enjoy the drive, but be prepared. Okay, be prepared. If you've got planning for your home and you designed it maybe 2 years ago, we're living in a world where materials are going up, labor is a scarcity. It's only going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen. It is only going to get worse. Not from a hiking perspective, but there's going to be such demand for construction work and workers to be done in the post-COVID environment, if we ever get out of there, that your project that you may have got planning for 15, 18, 20 months ago has gotten very expensive and will continue to get very expensive if you can find somebody to do the job. So my advice to you today is stop sending out your 4 or 5 page PDF, can you price my house? And I'm not long at this, but I can see by the way that people send their emails, they're shopping me or not. Their approach is send the email with the drawings to as many people as you can, get 3 to 5 quotes, see how you get on, and no acknowledgement of the fact that these all have to be, they take time to price well and properly. They cost money to price well and properly. And I will not send a quote to somebody, or I will not give somebody a budget indicator until they're on the phone with me. I can figure out what their values are. I can figure out where their priorities are. And if they're a material first, fabric first, as the great man from Daikin said on a call today, fabric first is always the primary focus. When you're dealing with somebody who's willing to invest in high quality material, which will make their home energy efficient, easier to run, cheaper to run in the long term, those are the kind of people that you can work with. You can achieve extremely, extremely good results with. But they're not the people who send out a 5-page document. They send out a tender invitation managed by a quantity surveyor or an engineer or an architect. And they have broken down quantities that they want to price against. They have the specification for the type of heat pump they want to use. Generally, they may have an electrical spec. And those people, when they do get their 3 to 5 quotes back, get a consistent, within a margin of error, plus or minus 2 or 3%, you would expect that they should come in around the same price. If you want to make a financial decision based on your own ability to assess a quotation on a project that will probably cost you a couple of €100,000 with no formal training, especially when it comes to building regulations and requirements now, and what is required to make a building Part L compliant and NZEB compliant, and then the additional notion that you may be able to manage that project and keep the cost down by yourself is worrying, and it's a growing trend, and the trend is only being driven by the fact that the access to the costs and capital that's required to build these buildings is not readily available. So therefore people are exposing themselves to higher risk, poor quality buildings that run over budget, that are mismanaged and misquoted from the start. So the next call you make is not to me, for once. I'm not even going to mention my mobile number. Is get on to the engineer or the architect who initially designed the home on your behalf, get them to put a tender pack together, or talk to a QS directly and get a clear idea of what you should be expecting to pay for your home, and then go to the market with the detailed information that will allow you to get the price you need to make that decision with no surprises. And no surprises is the definitive statement, with less surprises. The world is a variable place. There's no constants there. Projects take turns for the better and for the worse. If you're prepared and you've done a proper analysis on it, there'll be less surprises. You won't be scrambling around looking for 40 or 50,000 euros to pay for something that you thought was covered in the budget, and you can enjoy the process of building your dream home. And I'd love to be a part of that process, certainly. So then when you realize what it's going to cost, when you have an expectation, set your budget, set your terms, then it's time to go to your builders, then it's time to go to your frame suppliers, then it's time to go to the market and get the home you deserve, and you should be rewarded for your diligence. And I am certain if you follow this advice, you will.